Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mio on MMA podcast. I am Mio, and I'm here to give you my thoughts on UFC 302, which has just taken place, or not just taken place, but took place last night in Newark, New Jersey. And Islam Makhachev emerges still as the champion of the UFC's lightweight division, the most prestigious division probably in all of MMA. And other than that, we didn't get a lot. Sean Strickland won, probably will get a title shot. Kevin Holland got a pretty cool, submission. Not for the faint of heart, I will say that much. And then, of course, Nico Price, Alex Morono on the main card, and then we had the undercard. Not really sure why Nico Price and Alex Morono were on the main card, but hey, we'll get into that in a bit. Other than that, the two big non-fight stories, I guess, coming out of this are Dana White's refusal to give Islam Makhachev any credit or take any credit away from Jon Jones. It's very, very weird. I don't even understand the logic behind it. I mean, I assume the answer is probably just that Dana White does actually believe that Jon Jones is unquestionably the best fighter of all time and takes actual offense that anyone suggests otherwise. To be clear, I have no problem with Jon Jones being your GOAT pick. If you, viewer, listener, are saying, hey, Jon Jones is actually the best fighter of all time, I don't necessarily disagree. He definitely has the achievements and the longevity to make that argument. I would say that he is doing it in two of the weakest divisions in men's MMA, probably the two weakest divisions in MMA. Men's MMA, 205 and 265. And to be clear, this applied with the same. I never really rated Randy Couture or Chuck Liddell or Tito Ortiz or Vanderlei Silva or Shogun Rua, whoever happened to be the consensus number one fighter at 205 at the time as one of the as the GOAT of all time. And I didn't even really have a guy like Fedor, who I have an immense amount of respect for, and also in the PED era of heavyweight, as being the guy. I always thought that no, you're the guy in the division where the people who are actually athletic go and do other sports. And that was kind of it. So I've never had Jones there, but I don't object to him being there. But I don't know, it's just kind of weird to see the promoter of the company literally shutting down a guy who is going to be a part of the company for a lot longer than Jon Jones. Because Islam Makhachev almost assuredly will be fighting after Jon Jones retires, and probably will be a champion after Jon Jones retires. Because Jones is talking about his fight with Stipe Miocic being his last fight. So the UFC realistically shouldn't be in the Jones business of promotion. But hey. And then, of course, there's the fact that Donald Trump was there, got the usual entrance, blah, blah, blah. I've said it before, I don't like it. And but at the same time, the UFC is allowed to do what they're going to do. I'm not surprised. I'm not offended by it anymore. I actually want to say I was never offended by it to begin with, because honestly, if you're taking your P's and Q's of political correctness from the UFC, you're doing it wrong. I that's all I can really say. And the only thing I've always said is I find it really, really annoying that the UFC is held up as an apolitical institution. But this is very political. Let's be clear here. A lot of people try to use the excuse that no, Dana White and Donald Trump are actually just good buddies, and Donald Trump is a celebrity. Donald Trump was never given these walkouts before he became involved in presidential politics. Never. Even when they were doing events at Trump's venues, he did not get this intro. So it is absolutely a political thing. I would just like it to be acknowledged as such. That is all. That's it. And also I would like to have it acknowledged as something greater than having a rainbow armband for Pride Month or something, or some kind of visible lip service to BLM, because that's what it tends to get compared to by people who I think are not really debating in good faith. All right, let's talk about the card here. Let's run this down. So main event wise, we had Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier. Makhachev comes out, scores the early takedown against Poirier. He ate one good shot, but then blitzed in, took him down. Even tried for a Kimura, got the back of Poirier, finished on his back for the remainder of the round. I had that round 10-8. Now, it was 10-9 on like every scorecard that I saw, so whatever. But I had it as a 10-8. Round 2 was more interesting. This one was a bit more split. Poirier was able to stop some takedowns in open space. If we consult the almighty, and when I say almighty, I'm being incredibly sarcastic, UFC stats, he stopped 3 of Makhachev's takedowns, Makhachev going 1 for 4. Slight edge and strikes landed for Poirier, but he did get taken down, admittedly for just 50 seconds. That didn't really do anything. But at the same time, the stopping of the takedowns was keeping Poirier from committing to any kind of like super meaningful offense. Like if you watch his strikes, it's probably the least venomous round of Poirier you're gonna find. I don't think he had Makhachev hurt at any point. I think Makhachev probably landed the better quality strikes. And again, the number of strikes was very, very similar. So I still gave that round to Makhachev, even though his wrestling, for the most part, was stopped. Round 3, we're back to basically kind of a mix of round 1 and round 2. Poirier is still defending takedowns in open space, but he is getting caught against the fence. He is having to use a wizard to try to stay up, and it does not work. Makhachev eventually breaks him down, takes his back again. Poirier is trying to get up. He's been busted open, like nose is gushing blood at this point from the ground and pound. Managed to get up after an armbar attempt by Makhachev, which was not particularly a good idea, but hey. And then even on the feet, Islam is just keeping it up and winning actual boxing exchanges with him. Islam Makhachev, I'll just say this, has improved his striking quite a bit since taking the belt. Or maybe even when he took the belt, but like his development of his hands is quite impressive. And we also have the head kick knockout of Volkanovski, so like dude can kick now. So there is that on the table as well. But I do think that his wrestling maybe has regressed a little bit. Like it's like anything. You have a certain amount of training time in the day, in the week, and so on. If you dedicate a ton of it to striking, even though you've been wrestling your entire life, and there's a base level that you are not going to go below because of all that practice, that muscle memory, that natural instinct built into you, you will start to not be quite as sharp. And I think that is happening for him a little bit. But I think it works out because it's not like he's being he went 5 for 16 in this fight, takedowns, which is not great. But at the same time, he still had 10 minutes and 23 seconds of top control against an elite lightweight. So, what are we talking about? 4th round, I gave to Poirier. He managed to stop the takedowns for the most part, 1 for 6. Was on his back for about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. But he busted Makhachev up, big cut on the forehead. And that was the round where he did significant damage. And he's also the only round that he significantly, I don't even know significantly, it was like a 5-strike difference, but that he outlanded Makhachev by any kind of comfortable margin. So that's the round I gave him. And then the 5th round, he gets caught and submitted with a Darce choke by Islam Makhachev, who had a great dominant performance here over Poirier. After the fight, Poirier talking about maybe he's retiring. He's not sure what he has to go for because I guess he's come to pace with the idea that he's not going to be the undisputed champion, which is probably true because he's 35 years old. That tends to be the downside of any career below 185. This was kind of his last chance at that. He's not going to get it. He's not up for a Poirier or for a Conor McGregor fight because the trash talk of that he finds very, very draining. He's kind of been honest about that before. That being said, I could still see a 4th Conor fight being a big payday for him, potentially, and you could do that. As for what's next, Makhachev has actually a lot of options to defend his title against. He's got Charles Oliveira, who he's been booked against twice, and it's not worked out either time. He's got Max Holloway, the BMF champion, who just beat Justin Gaethje and really is kind of in line for a title shot. And then he's got Arman Tsarukyan, the rematch that he probably would like to prove himself to be better at. And obviously, it's a fight that the UFC is trying to get together as well because Arman has, I think, refused to fight twice. Not to be clear, I'm not saying that is a negative thing. I'm saying that the circumstances they offered him the fight were very much less than ideal. The level of prep he would have been able to get would have been terrible. So I would have said no as well. But hey, it may still impact some of the things that the UFC does. So they may go with a Holloway fight. That's probably the biggest one. They may go with Saryukin. That's the one that makes the most sense. They may go with Charles Oliveira. That would be a fan favorite in kind of a middle ground. But I'm not sure. Poirier, I have whatever he really wants, basically. If there's a fight out there that like fires him up to fight, do that fight. Whatever that happens to be. Give him time to think about it. And this is one of those rare times where I'm going to kind of let the fighter match make for himself. Now, I'm not, there are limitations on this. He doesn't get another title shot, for example. Like, that's not on the table. But, like, if he wants to do a BMF fight with Max Holloway, I'm okay with that. If he wants to do a rematch with Justin Gaethje, I'm okay with that. If he wants to fight Conor for a fourth time, I'm okay with that. It's whatever gets him out of the bed, so to speak, and gets the best out of Dustin Poirier possible. I will say he didn't jump for any Gillies here, but like his footwork was still very much getting pushed back to the cage. It happens. In fairness, part of that is Makhachev being actually like, when Makhachev is determined to do it, he's actually a pretty good pressure fighter. He is sometimes shut down by southpaws. That was a concern coming into this. But outside of like kind of the second round, it wasn't really a thing. Maybe the fourth round, I guess. But, the first round, the third round, even the fifth round, he was putting the pressure onto Poirier and getting the job done as you would expect him to do. Sean Strickland versus Paulo Costa, I have remarkably little to say about this. I scored all 5 rounds for Strickland. His jab, teep kick, occasional right hand was getting the job done. The only round that I thought Costa had something going in really was the 5th round, where Costa was outlanding Strickland by a pretty significant margin and actually stopping the forward momentum, getting to move forward himself and do some things. And then in the last, minute or so, Strickland kind of went a little bit wild, and I thought did end up winning the round with he hit Costa with a high kick that kind of slumped him. Didn't think it would really, 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 really hurt him, but like a little bit. And, got back on the front foot. And then we get to the judges' scorecards, and one judge scored 4 rounds for Paulo Costa. And what makes this worse is that the ones that scored it for the Paulo Costa scorecard was rounds 1 through 4 from Dave Torelli for Costa. And that makes no sense. Now, I am going to look at the UFC stats here. I believe I saw that Costa actually was pretty even in strikes landed in rounds 1 and 2. And indeed outlanded him, apparently, according to UFC stats, 31-24 and 32-25. So I guess maybe you can give him those rounds. But he was horribly outworked to the 3rd and the 4th round. 45-34 and 39-28. So those 2 rounds are like definitively Strickland's. The 5th round at the end is definitively Strickland's. So the absolute best you could do for Costa is him losing 48-47. That is the most pro Costa scorecard I can come up with. And I couldn't even come up with that live. I'm just saying, like, hindsight, looking at the numbers here that UFC Stats has, I can ponder a world where Costa won rounds 1 and 2. That's it. There's no way he won 3, 4, or 5. So that is a terrible scorecard, and we're not gonna be done with Dave Torelli because we have more for Dave Torelli. We have more. This was not the beginning of Dave Torelli's bad night. And he's been kind of an indifferent judge to me for like a long, long time. I might have to revise my opinion on that. As for what's next, Strickland admitted that the fight was boring, called out Donald Trump. It's a shame that what they're doing to you, blah, blah, blah. Typical Trump defense, Republicanist, whatever, expected. Wants a title shot, which I think is pretty much what is going to happen. He's going to get the winner of DDP versus Izzy. It makes sense. There's no one else really in line for a title shot. If I'm really looking at this, let me look here. Let me quickly look at the Tapology rankings here. Is there, because I actually trust them more than the UFC rankings. The only other person is Jared Cannonier, who's on a 2-fight winning streak, beating Strickland and beating Marvin Vettori quite convincingly, and he's fighting Nasruddin Imavov if he can beat Imavov, which I think he probably will. Spoiler. Then you have that, and then I guess there's the winner of Whitaker versus Chimaev that is like an option, but I really wouldn't want to do it. But I don't know. The UFC might do that. I can see that. I really doubt Cannonier gets the title shot, but I could see if Chimaev beats Whitaker, they will probably do that. But I think it should be Strickland. And then in the case of Costa, I have a fight against Kyle Bohayo, who is a guy they're trying to get into the top 10. Costa has a top 10 spot. Beating Costa would be that kind of thing, and we'll see. It's a winnable fight for Costa as well, although I don't know. I'm probably the biggest Costa hater, not because of like not anything to do with like him as a person necessarily. It's just like as a fighter, he beats people who he can just overwhelm. And at the top of the division, that is going to be hard to really find. Everyone he's fought that has like a legitimate, non-absolute folding game to them has beaten him. That's why I picked Strickland here. So there you go. Kevin Holland versus Michael Oleksiejczuk was fun. Oleksiejczuk came out pressuring Holland and actually dropped him. They go to the ground. Holland wraps up an armbar, and it's pretty ugly. He definitely broke that arm, and Holland gets the win. Oleksiejczuk did not tap, as far as I could tell. This was a technical submission, which was insane. Holland jumps the cage to talk to Trump and Dana. I wonder if he'll get fined about that. They've been I don't know, like for the hop in the cage thing, I think should just not be a fine, full stop. But like, it'll be interesting if, who was it? There was someone a couple of events ago who literally asked Dana for permission to hop the cage after he won. Dana gave it, and he still got fined. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if this particular hopping of the cage doesn't get much attention. For Holland, I've got a fight against Michelle Pahea because that would make a ton of sense. And for Oleksiejczuk, I've got Christian Leroy Duncan. Nico Price versus Alex Morono was a really, really fun first round of like grappling where like we got an inverse crucifix and stuff. Like it was really cool when Price took Morono down, and we got some like really, really interesting scrambles and really, really interesting like fun. I thought Morono won that round, but then I think he gassed out. And I do wonder if like, it was a short notice fight, but it wasn't that short notice. So I do wonder if maybe there's an injury there, an infection, a bad weight cut, whatever the case may be. But he ran out of gas against Price, and Price was able to take over in the second and the third round, where he would land uppercuts, and he would also take Morono down and like kind of grind on him. I was worried about the wrestling threat that Price does have in his back pocket, but doesn't usually use. So he did that. I wonder what was his takedown numbers in this fight. Not that it particularly matters. Like the numbers here aren't going to really particularly matter here. Yeah, he went 5 for 5. Yeah, perfect. He had 3 takedowns in the second round, one in the third, one in the first, and when he was on top, there wasn't a ton. Like Morono was trying stuff, like he was moving around, obviously, but he just got outworked in the second and the third round. Now, to be clear, Morono still threw like 52 strikes and 95 strikes in the second and third round, so like it's still insane. He threw 225 strikes, and I'm talking about him fading in this fight, but that is the case. His ability to have Price give him any respect faded out in the second and third round. So there you go. Big win for Nico Price. I got him against Carlson Harris next. I got Morono against Uroš Medic. Randy Brown versus Elijah Zaleski was a fun fight. In the first round, it was a lot of Brown hitting him with that reliable jab. There was some eye poking. By the way, comment on the gloves here. I've said this before. It's not the glove design that actually causes these eye pokes. Like, I'm not saying that it plays absolutely no role or whatever, but if you think about it, form a fist right now. Now imagine a glove that forces you to hold that fist together. The only thing that possibly could prevent you from eye poking someone is that. A glove that is stiff enough, strong enough that you can't open your hand. Okay. How are you going to grapple with that? So like that wouldn't work. And that's kind of the problem here, is that at the end of the day, the problem with the eye pokes is pretty simple because it exists in promotions that use different types of gloves. It's that at the end of the day, fighters open their hand intentionally to do parries and to do different things, don't close their hands when they throw, and they eye gouge. And they don't get penalized. That's the truth. Like, there is the old saying, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, and that is eye pokes right now. If you're not going to get called for it, why would you not do it? So that's the thing. If you want to stop eye poking, it is rule enforcement. That is the only way. Like, yes, you can do certain things with the gloves to make it a little bit less likely or whatever. The Pride gloves, for example, were fairly good at this. And Trevor Whitman says he has gloves that'll prevent it. But like, there's nothing about the gloves that open your hands. Nothing, 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 nothing. I have a pair of the now old UFC licensed gloves. They don't open your hand. If you just keep fists, you will not poke people. Anyways, round 2, Zaleski managed to rock Brown early, took him down, had the back control for a little bit, and then at the end, Brown managed to get his back and work for a rear naked choke. It was a pretty hot end of the round, but still a round I gave to Zaleski. And then in the third round, there was more eye poking. Zaleski holding up like 3 fingers, like, you poked me 3 times. But Brown working the jabs. Zaleski trying some creative stuff. He threw a wheel kick in there. He did some spinning, but like the jab and the step up knee by Randy Brown, which at one point cut Zaleski, was pretty effective. And Zaleski starts working for some takedowns again. He ends up getting on the cage. They end up reversing each other a couple times on the cage. They separate. Zaleski goes for another takedown. About 30 seconds. Does get it. Ends up going for the back, but he cannot finish the choke. And we go to the cards. Randy Brown wins 29-28. Calls out Jeff Neal, which I think makes sense. And then Zaleski I have against Max Griffin. I'm surprised that fight actually hasn't happened already. Roman Kopylov versus Cesar Almeida. Round 1 was very impressive from Kopylov. He had a couple of leg kicks, but that was like about it. He was actually dropped. He actually dropped Almeida. And was having a really, really good time with his boxing. He was hitting like some solid 2 pieces and like just doing his thing. It was a very, very exciting one. And Kopylov got a couple takedowns, proved that he could do that, but didn't really hold position. And then the second round was terrible. It was Kopylov getting on top and doing nothing. I scored it for Almeida, and I know a lot of people like scored it for Kopylov. Like there were 30-27s flying for Kopylov, and I think that's an incredibly bad card because I think the second round has to go to Cesar Almeida. Again, I'm going to refer to the UFC stats for what it's worth, but I think the level of difference here is enough that I don't think that there's a way to look at this any other way. Almeida outlanded him 52-17 in the second round. Yes, he was controlled and he was on bottom for 3 minutes, 2 minutes 58 seconds to be technical, but Kopylov landed 9 significant strikes, 17 total strikes in the round. It's not a winning round. The third round, I think, was close enough that you could go either way, but it was kind of the same dynamic of Kopylov getting beaten on the feet, but getting the fight down to the ground, landing about the same number of strikes, and doing very, very little with top position. I guess in hindsight, I give that round to the third round to Kopylov. I did score the fight live for Almeida. I'm taking the back. I'm walking that back. I have 29-28 Kopylov, but the 30-27 Kopylov and the people calling this a robbery because one judge did in fact score the fight for Almeida. That was Chris Lee. Yeah, that doesn't make me feel all that great that my initial card agreed with Chris Lee. If you've listened to a couple of podcasts, you know I do not have fond thoughts of Chris Lee. But I still think that it's possible. I think the third round was very, very close and could go either way. This is the thing. I feel like this was like going back in time to like old school judging where like being on top won you the fight, which is not supposed to now. And I understand that it still does. I understand that top control, and we're going to talk about that later with Dawson versus Selecki, still overridingly does things for people, but it's not supposed to. It's supposed to be a tertiary scoring criteria. It is supposed to be damage, effective striking, and grappling, and then we get to control. And in terms of the effective striking and the damage, Almeida won both the second and third round. I thought the third round was close enough that you could go either way. For Kopylov, I got Andre Muniz. For Almeida, I just want someone who will bang. Like he is, he's 36 years old. He's not going to be a guy who's going to be around long enough to actually become like good. So if you're going to have him, just have him with people who will bang. And I understand, to be clear, I understand that this booking was supposed to be that. Kopylov is predominantly a boxer. We expected him to stand and bang. And if he had, it would have been fun because that first round was dope. But I don't know, maybe we have to go with someone who has even less of a wrestling pedigree. Jelton Almeida versus Alexander Romanov. Early takedown from Almeida. Got to the back. Worked for the rear naked choke. Foiled the first time. Gets it on the second time. Boom. Done. Tap out. Bam. Wants gone. Fine. He has clarified in post-fight interviews that he just wants to fight in Paris. But like, if you're going to fight in Paris and you're a heavyweight, you're fighting Gane. Like if you're a top ranked heavyweight, you're fighting Gone. So let's be honest, that's what you want. And it's what I would do, although I don't think Gone will take it. Romanov I have against the winner of Andre Arlovsky, Martin Budai. I'm kind of hoping it would be Budai, because actually Budai versus Romanov has a little bit, it tickles something in my brain. Arlovsky, Romanov does not. Grant Dawson versus Joe Selecki was Grant Dawson dominating, with only the first round being kind of interesting because early on, Dawson goes for this jumping knee. We end up in the clinch. Gets a takedown. Selecki goes for the neck. Dawson gets clear of the choke, but doesn't really do anything. Like, he waits a full minute before he starts to GMP, and he even got cut up from bottom by an elbow by Selecki. So this was the round that I thought that probably actually should go to Selecki. I don't think it actually ended up doing so. I think one judge did give it to him, but I thought he had the damage there. And in terms of strikes landed, I don't know. I guess it did heavily favor Dawson. I guess there was more ground and pound than I recalled. I don't know. But anyways, the second and third round were basically that without any threat from Selecki, essentially. He got taken down and he couldn't get up. He was controlled for 4+ minutes in all 3 rounds, and I can't say that I feel bad for him losing the fight. But it was kind of dull, and I don't have a lot more to say. Dawson versus Benoit Saint Denis, and Selecki versus Nazim Sadikov. Phil Rowe versus Jake Matthews. This was pretty fun. Phil Rowe won the first round. I saw Rowe was being very, very front foot heavy, which is a bit weird for a guy who's 6'3". He was kind of crowding Matthews, landing low kicks, and Matthews was landing low kicks and trying to jab and spear him, but he was getting busted up. The nose was leaking, the damage was there. Jumping knee from Phil Rowe wound up with him getting low blowed by Jake Matthews. That was funny. I gave the round to Rowe, but I gave the second and third to Matthews, as Rowe just kind of faded. I don't think he really necessarily gassed or whatever, but like at the end, Matthews was able to start taking the front foot and landing his stuff, and it just seemed like Rowe didn't have an idea really to go. Like, as soon as his jab did not maintain range, he just didn't seem to have much. So a solid performance from Jake Matthews. I don't necessarily believe in him because like this feels a lot like that Andre Filo fight where like a lot of people got very big on Jake Matthews kind of out of nowhere. And it was kind of like, although I'm looking at the stats, apparently Matthews outlanded Rowe in the first round 35-18. So 30-27. Adrian Castro live. I kind of said that you had a bad scorecard, but I don't know. Maybe I need to go back and watch that first round and find out, because apparently there was a lot more volume coming from Matthews than from Rowe. It didn't feel like it, but that apparently was the case. So maybe I need to go back and do the old click on strikes, the little counter machines that you can put in your hands. For Phil Rowe, I've got Matthew Semmelsberger. For Jake Matthews, I've got Brian Battle. Mickey Gall versus Basil Halfas. This was fun. I actually kind of wonder who got the fight of the night. There wasn't like a super... Oh, they gave it to Makhachev Poirier. Yeah, that's fine. Makhachev got performance of the night, and so did Kevin Holland. Yeah, that makes sense. But I do feel like Basil Halfas and Mickey Gall got robbed a little bit on that one, because they had a fun fight here. It was pretty sloppy, don't get me wrong, but it was a lot of half-ass pressuring and like, doing some good things, but like not putting together the actual like combinations to really start taking the fight over. I had him winning the first and second round. I had Gall winning the third round because Gall started to actually hurt him. Like, he was landing him very, very clean with the right hand. Actually had him stumbled, I think, twice in the third round. So I don't think there was a full-on knockdown at any point in the round, but it was definitely him starting to figure out that, like, Basil Halfas' striking defense is not very good. and basically came down to this. Halfas landed more shots in the first and the second round. Gall landed more in the third round. They were both able to hurt each other. They were both able to bust each other up. They were both bleeding. The takedowns didn't really play much of a role. Halfas did go 3 for 5, but didn't really get any top control time. Gall went 1 for 2. It was a bit weird to see two predominant grappler guys consent to a striking matchup that did not suck. Hafez with his political statement of the night: free Palestine. Boom. And people will say that, like, I'm not condemning that, but I'm condemning having Donald Trump at the event. I think the difference is that the UFC has never actually claimed that their fighters are apolitical. I don't think it's possible. Like you have fighters from all over the world. They're going to bring politics into it. And it doesn't matter if I agree with the politics or not. If a fighter came out and was like pro-Israel, which we've seen, or pro-Russia, I wouldn't complain. I would disagree, and it would perhaps impact how I view that fighter, but I wouldn't disagree, or I wouldn't have an issue with them saying it. Like, that's just freedom of expression, freedom of politics. It's that the promotion is, quote unquote, apolitical. That's the problem. When it suits them. Anyways, next up, Basil Hafez versus Kenan Song, because dude needs to learn how to like actually throw combinations, and Song will teach you the problem of going strike for strike, power for power with a guy. That's essentially it. Mickey Gall versus Court McGee. If Court McGee is still around, makes a lot of sense to me. I'm still very, very, very nervous about the Mickey Gall thing. Like, this was a solid performance, but like it was the first one in a bit. And I understand that like the back is fixed now, but I don't know. It's hard for me to summon up like a super interesting idea for him. That being said, I'm no longer dreading his next fight. There you go. Jocelyn Edwards versus Eileen Perez was fun, sloppy grappling. They both got reversed more times than is absolutely healthy because they both got over aggressive on top control, and both probably are honestly not used to dealing with people who can match them for power, essentially. There wasn't really much there. I mean, there was a guillotine choke by Edwards in the second round that led to an impressive little top position bit for her. That was cool. There was a headbutt by Edwards on a slam type deal. I'm not sure if it was an intentional headbutt or if it was like trying to do like kind of the lift up and crush somebody against the canvas. But it was definitely a headbutt. I think Perez maybe overindulged it a little bit just because of where she was holding. Like, it was kind of like not where the head hit. But hey, whatever. Again, I'm not going to critique. You play the game. But at the end of the day, Perez was able to get more top control time, essentially, and was able to do more with it. The problem with Edwards was that, again, when she was on top, she did not do much. And the frustration with both of these ladies is that they could be more. They are, I think, legitimately good athletes in a division that is desperately in need of good athletes. So it would be nice, it would be ideal, it would be solid if they could improve and become better. Because they could have the potential of being like title contenders in this division. They really do. They just have to sort some things out. With Edwards, it's the fact that there's no venom to her game. It's very, very control oriented on the feet and on the ground, where like there's no violence, really. And with Perez, there's just like there's ironically a lack of control in a game that usually wins because of control, where she cannot control people. And also, they got into a fight at the PI. So like particularly Perez needs to probably control herself, and being at the goat shed doesn't help because the goat shed coaches just seem like absolute crazy people that you probably do not want to have to deal with, like, just in general. Although apparently Edwards outlanded her 64-15 in the second round. I don't recall that being the case. I do not. I scored the second round for Perez. Mostly because she knocked her down with a spinning back fist. I guess I didn't cover that. She did knock Edwards down with a spinning back fist. I had 2 rounds to 1 for Perez, and that's pretty much it. Next up, Caro Hossa for Perez, and Edwards against Melissa Mullins. Andre Lima versus Mitch Raposo. This was better than I expected. Raposo showed off like some actually pretty decent like combination punching at sometimes, and like some good hand speed that I didn't really realize he had. But like his grappling game never got going, and that's his A game. Like, he's a BJJ black belt. That's what led to his wins on the regional scene, is his ability to kind of bully people. And I'm still worried that like physically he just can't do that. Lima looked sharp for the most part, but also did a lot of fouls in the second round, which led to me giving Raposo the round. Like, he grabbed the cage and pulled himself up. He also got a hard warning for like 2 eye pokes. I think there was a low blow in there as well. So very heavy on the fouls there, and there just wasn't really there wasn't really a lot of adjustments from Raposo. Essentially, he just kind of kept trying to do the same thing and kept kind of failing at it. Lima did fail a little bit, obviously missed weight as well, which doesn't help him at all. But at the end of the day, he outlanded Raposo in all 3 rounds. Raposo only landed more than 10 strikes in the 3rd round. That's not good enough. It's not good enough at all. Anyways, one judge scored this fight for your boy Lima, and that was David Torelli, who scored Raposo the first and the second round. And I don't get it. I don't understand. The first round, he got doubled up in output. He got worked. Like, that was his worst round. Internal logic of this scorecard for a moment. If you're going to give Raposo 2 rounds, it's the second and the third. The second because very, very little happened, and therefore you're just kind of turned against it because of the fouls Lima was doing. And the third because it was like relatively close, 17 to 22 in total strikes landed. You know, Lima had faded out enough that like effectively Raposo was keeping up, even though I think he easily loses that round as well. Like, I think he loses all 3 rounds. But if you're going to get him, internal logic, you give him the second and third. So I don't know what David Torelli is doing on that one. It was a bad night for David Torelli. It was a bad night. It was a bad night for Gaspar Olivier or Olivier Gaspar. I forget which order there is. His handling of fouls was a bit weird. Anyways, next up I've got Andre Lima against Ode Osborne if he's staying at 125. He's only missed weight the one time. Let's see what he can do. Let's not, bring out the lynch rope yet. And Raposo I've got against Dana White Contender Series fodder because realistically, like, Lima's not much above Dana White Contender Series. Like, he won on Contender Series, got the DQ win over Igor Severino because of the bite, and then he got this win. And like, Raposo did lose on Contender Series to Jake Hadley, so he's pretty much at that level. Anyways, that is it. Please check out the links down below for my social medias, my video gaming stuff, and the MMA Simulator Discord. Check them out. And I'm just hoping for kind of a better card next time out. What do we got? What's the next UFC card? In 5 days, UFC Fight Night. Cannonier versus Imavov. Cannonier, Imavov. Reyes versus Jacoby. Marquez versus Reese. Fajea versus Soriano Baeza. Actually kind of surprised to see Miguel Baeza still around. Raul Rosas Jr., Rick Tercios rebooking. Eduarda Mora versus Denise Gomes. Puya Tomar versus Ryan Amanda. It's Hyan Dos Santos, I think is her actual name. But Hyan Amanda, who I do have a lot of hope for, although she is too small. Cody Stamon versus Taylor Lapalus. Brad Katona versus Jesse Butler. Thiago Moises, Ludovic Klein. Charles Radke versus Carlos Pratis. That actually could be pretty fun. I could see that being fun. Daniel Marcos versus John Castaneda. That's a fun fight. And Andrea Lee versus Montana De La Rosa. Is that a rematch? I swear that's happened before. It has happened in 2019. Lee won by decision. Spoiler, I'm probably going to take Lee again. Don't get me wrong. She's getting long in the tooth. 35 years old. Montana De La Rosa, formerly Montana Stewart, is 29 years old. So there's theoretical, like, one getting better, one getting worse. But like, realistically, I think the same things that guided that matchup the first time guided the second time. Anyways, that doesn't look great, but I'll be back with predictions for that. There's also one card coming up. I might have some thoughts on that. We'll see. Depends on how much time I have. I am looking for a job right now, and obviously, depending on the job interviews, it could theoretically impact things. But you have a good day, have a good weekend, and enjoy the fights.